Good afternoon and welcome to the Education, Children's Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start these proceedings, may I bring your attention to some housekeeping. There is no expected fire alarm testing for today, so therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the fire and emergency procedures that are applicable to the Council House. Please can I also ask that you use your microphone when addressing the meeting and that it is switched off when you are not. Your mobile devices switch to silent or off, please. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing. By entering the Warspite room today, you are agreeing to those recordings. Do we have any apologies, Jake?
Apologies received from Councillor Rebecca Smith. Councillor Wood is substituting.
Thank you. Moving to item 2, can I ask the panel to note my appointment as chair of this municipal year? Councillor Rebecca Smith was noted to be vice chair, but due to her being elected as MP, a new vice chair will be confirmed at the next council meeting. Is that agreed? I'd also like to welcome so many new faces this year. I wonder if maybe it might be a good shout just to say who you are. Would that be acceptable? Okay, so obviously I'm Zoe. I'm the chair for this scrutiny, and I am the councillor for Honecknell Ward. Chris?
Yeah, afternoon, ladies and gents, councillors. Chris Wood, I'm the councillor for Egg Buckland. Prior to this, I was a councillor in Hampshire and Fareham and South Gloucestershire and Filton.
Hi everyone, I'm Councillor McClay, Lauren. I am one of the ward councillors for Chadwood.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Councillor Terry Beer. I've been here for nearly 20 years, but I now sit on this council as an independent member, and I'm the first woman elected as an independent member to the council. And I'm very experienced in children's services, having followed my career through, so I was in good place to ask lots of questions. So I'm hoping we'll clarify lots of bits and pieces for our new members today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Councillor Gilmore, Lindsay Gilmore of Moorview Ward, and I guess the main thing that I bring to this is my long teaching background.
My name is Stefan Kryzhanec. I'm a councillor for Plymouth Dunstan Ward.
I'm Paul McNamara, Labour and Co-op councillor for Efford and Lipson.
I assume we're introducing ourselves. So I'm Councillor Dylan Tiffett, I represent Compton Ward, and if we're talking about what we bring to the committee, I bring my lived experience as a young person who experienced children's social services.
Okay, I'm Councillor John Stevens, Councillor for Dunstan Ward, and my lived experience was a child and also a teacher and a head teacher for 33 years.
I'm Alison Simpson. I'm newly elected councillor for Budshead Ward, and my day job involves I work as a caseworker for Luke Pollard MP.
Hi, I'm Amanda Paddison and I'm Head of Access to Learning for Plymouth City Council. I'm Lisa Lynn Scott. I'm the Education, Participation and Skills Service Director for Plymouth City Council.
Hello, I'm Councillor Sally Creswell. I'm the Cabinet Member for Education, Skills and Apprenticeships, and in a previous life I worked for 30 years in primary education.
Hi everyone, I'm Temilola Salomon. I'm the new Service Director for Children, Young People and Families. Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Jemima Lang. I am a Stoke Ward councillor. I'm Deputy Leader of the Council and I have the portfolio for children's social care.
Hello, I'm Jake Metcalfe. I'm the Democratic Advisor for this panel.
And so much more than that. I couldn't do this without Jake, just so that we're all clear. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest in respect to the items on today's agenda? Okay, so I'm going to declare an interest that I work for Young Devon and they may come up today. Item 4 is to note the scrutiny panel responsibilities. The committee is asked to note the children, young people and family scrutiny panel responsibilities. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 5, minutes from the last meeting that took place on the 28th of February 2024. Does the committee agree to the minutes from the last meeting? We have made some corrections to it.
Agreed.
Agreed. Can I get a proposer and a seconder? Thank you. I have no chair's urgent business. So moving on to item number 7, please can I hand over to Councillor Cresswell, Cabinet Member for Education, Skills and Apprenticeships, to introduce the item before handing over to Amanda Paddison. Members may be aware that Part 2 paper was also published, which relates to the finances of the sufficiency plan. If members have questions relating to that additional content, could we please save that item for later? Thank you. So over to you, Sally.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Zoe. So this is something which is very dear to my heart. And like many areas of the country, to start off in terms of our SEND sufficiency plan, like many areas of the country, Plymouth has seen an increase in the number of children who have an education, health and care plan, which is known as an EHCP. Considerable work is underway across the partnership to support children within mainstream settings without the need for an EHCP. This work will take time to embed and will not replace the need for special educational provision across the city. Data analysis has been completed by the recent rapid rise during 2023 of applications for EHCPs. This indicates that the forecasts are likely to be on the lower side of actual future numbers. Current analysis indicates that the city will be short of at least 105 special school places by 2030. Due to capacity pressures within Plymouth Special School Estate, the city has found itself in a position where it's had to place children in independent special schools, ISPs. There are currently 376 children and young people in Plymouth who attend 37 registered independent schools and post-16 settings. The total cost for these placements for the financial year 2023-2024 was approximately £8.6 million. Additional places for September 2024. Many children who have requested a special school place for point of entry in September 2024 have already had their place confirmed. The 0 to 25 service has been working with families to confirm as many places as quickly as possible. We are expanding our special school estate wherever possible to increase the number of places available in September. Many of our special schools have limited space to expand due to the nature of the actual sites. However, we're able to expand the following for September 2024. Cambridge, expansion of an additional 8 places. Longcaw's expansion of an additional 6 places. And Milford, expansion with a temporary satellite provision of an additional 20 to 30 places. Funding. The local authority has been receiving funding via the High Needs Provision Capital Allocations Grant, HNPCA, which you'll find in your pack. This grant should be used to increase the number of special education places that are available within Plymouth. Over the last 7 years, Plymouth has received a total of 15 million via this grant. The remaining funding available to fund expansion is 13 million. All the future expansion currently needs to be funded via this grant, as there is no additional funding available. Recommendations to increase capacity for 2024 through to 2030. The plan outlines a range of options to expand our special educational needs provision, which could be delivered and funded from the available grant. The plan also outlines an option to turn available space in Woodlands into special school nursery places. There is currently no indication that we need to expand the number of places for the school-aged children actually in Woodlands. Resource provision. The plan outlines proposals to increase resource provision within Plymouth. Plymouth already has several provisions meeting the needs of SEND pupils, that's children with special educational needs and disabilities across the city, based on their learning support needs. In a resource provision, a child would have access to teaching assistants and specialist teachers aligned to their needs.
Resource provision is not intended to be isolation for the rest of the school community and should be fully integrated into the day-to-day life of the school. And just to sort of emphasise that, this is about real inclusion in which children are within a mainstream school, within a resource provision, and they might well share a lot of the life and the activity and community aspects that go on in school in order to be included, which is really, really important, fundamentally what I would believe in as a school practitioner of many years. This option would see new provisions being established to ensure that children could access this type of support within the community. This option could offer an additional 50 to 75 places across the city. Milford. The condition of the accommodation at Milford is poor and the building is in need of total refurbishment. Full structure and condition surveys are underway and will be completed by the end of July to identify any underlying issues within the fabric of the building which prevent alterations or refurbishment. It is hoped that, subject to the outcome of the surveys, that not only could Milford be refurbished, but it could be remodelled to offer an additional 30 places. Additional buildings for long course. A building has become available next to the current long course site and the option to purchase this is being explored. If this was successful, then this could offer an additional 100 places subject to internal remodelling and refurbishment. New build to replace Milford. Although there have been plans in the past to build a new school which would replace Milford, currently there is not the funding for this option within the HNPCA. A new build would cost, and this is for special schools, would cost approximately 26 to up to perhaps 35 million, depending on the age and design of construction. I offer this paper very much to you, and can I also say the amount of work that has gone into it from the teams here has been quite amazing, working very much so as well with some absolutely amazing head teachers who I've been meeting with and who I've had the privilege to visit their schools, particularly some of their special schools, and also to meet with many of those young people and children. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Amanda, would you like to speak?
So I'd just like to thank committee for giving us the opportunity to bring this paper today. It does, as Sally said, outline our proposals for expansion, which I think is quite exciting for the city. What we have tried to do within the paper is use our existing resources to benefit the most children that we can with the broadest range of designations. As Sally has mentioned, building one school would solve one school problem, but it wouldn't solve the issue that we have across all of our designations. So what we have tried to put forward here is a real range of options with a real focus on inclusion within our city, keeping children within the city and having all the benefits that that brings, and focusing very much on having our children in our provision without the need to move them outside of the city. And hopefully you'll be able to see that in the paper. I can take any questions that you may want.
Thank you very much, and it is quite exciting. I know there's a member of our panel that is considerably excited about this, and I'll pass over to him in a moment. There are just a couple of things I would probably like to ask myself. Going through it is, through all the paper, there's a thread of the rising need for SEND, and I wondered if, for the purpose of the new members, if we could have some understanding of why that is. And I'd also quite like to explore a little bit about the EHCP and how relevant is that to the outcomes for young people with SEND, and what is the correlation for young people with SEND and an EHCP, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a rising need in terms of SEN and complex special educational needs nationally that is creating a pressure within the system and within mainstream settings, but also in terms of those complex needs that require specialist provision. So in that respect, Plymouth is not unusual compared to the national picture. What I would say is that we have had a high level of requests for education, health and care plans within Plymouth that have been accepted compared to a national picture where approximately 24% at initial request stage are declined, and those children's needs are considered to be able to be met within mainstream school. So therefore, what's really important in this is that this plan is a plan to expand the building spaces for our children who genuinely need a special school place. But it only works if we also, alongside that, work really hard to invest in our early and our targeted help to enable children and young people whose needs could be met in mainstream settings to be met in those places, rather than pushing up in the system so that those children and young people then require a place at special school where perhaps their needs could be met at an earlier stage. And that's why the resourced provision element of this plan is incredibly important, as Councillor Cresswell has mentioned, because it enables more young people who actually could really be integrated well into their mainstream settings with a little bit more additional support, and therefore they don't require a special school. I feel like I haven't quite captured the second part, Councillor Riley. Could you recap for me?
Yeah, I think my question was probably quite broad, and it probably runs through most things. Is that whole kind of what is the benefit of having an EHCP? Why have we suddenly got this rise? Why do suddenly? I mean, in my day job, I work with EHCPs, so I'm just trying to explore what benefit is it? So why do parents suddenly want, or service organisations suddenly want children to have ECHPs? What is the benefit for that? Does it get them extra service? Does it get them extra care? I just wanted people to understand that.
So it is a gateway to additional services and support that are funded, additionally to the funding that goes into a school as part of the age-weighted pupil funding, which that age-weighted pupil funding that goes into schools, it's ported direct from the DFE to academies, and from the DFE straight via us and straight out again into schools. That does include notional funding up to £6,000 for children's SEN needs, which is why schools have the ability to identify children and young people as having additional needs that aren't at the level of an EHCP, but do require that additional funding support, and that money is contained within that age-related funding that each school receives. And the reason it's age-related is because there's different amounts for different phases. So, yeah, so by having an EHCP, it allows those children, their schools and their families to access support and funding beyond that notional £6,000 of funding that are received as an entitlement to all children. And it is about reaching that level where that additional support is required, and schools and the whole system understanding what that level is and how a proportion of those children's needs could be met without an EHCP, because it will not do everything for every child.
That's a great explanation, thank you. Sally?
I just sort of if you turn to page 30, is a good way of seeing how the sort of pyramid, the hierarchy of SEN support and provision actually operates. So in a previous life, I was actually a SENCO in school. And one of the pieces of work that's being done, really effectively being done, is what's called the ordinary available provision and what's called the graduated response, so that children are actually within a classroom and thinking within a classroom of 30 children, within that classroom there might well be a child who has an EHCP or requires an EHCP, but there'll be a number of children who, before you get to that stage, are able to, and should be accommodated, and their learning should be adapted appropriately so as to make sure that they are able to access learning appropriately. And one of the important things, in some ways, that's probably happened to some extent perhaps with teachers not always having the expertise and the other challenges and such, is that we have to kind of get back to that position in that the ordinary available offer and a graduated response is in place so that we upskill teachers so that within classrooms they are able to deliver special educational needs. And if you look through that pyramid, you can see how you then get to a point where you have EHCP support within a mainstream setting. Also, what's also very exciting that we're talking about is being able to use the expertise from our special schools in order to do outreach work, which has gone on for some time, outreach work to help to support teachers who are actually in mainstream settings. So as well as this obviously this piece of work that's going on, which is a piece of work in order to make sure that we are able to have the provision and such for our special needs children at all levels. It's also a piece of work as well, which is looking at an approach in which we have and we keep as many of our children as possible within mainstream schools, mainstream settings, so that they are in fact with their communities. There's always going to be a need for very specialist provision for children who have very specialist and complex needs. But you can see how, looking at that pyramid of support, how ideally in a perfect world, how specialist and special education needs should actually work in order to support all children who have a particular special need, right up to those children who have the most serious needs.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Lindsay.
Yes, sorry. Oh, that's better. Lisa, I'm sorry if I didn't understand, but I wanted to ask the question that Zoe asked, and I didn't really feel that I quite got it. So I was looking at the numbers on page 32 of the digital, but it's not. It's actually page 27 at the end and page 28. And I wondered, why does Plymouth have such a high percentage of special educational needs compared to the national average? And they're in the social, emotional and mental health area, and also in speech, language and communication needs. And what's underneath my question as to why is the thought that, is this something that could be addressed better at preschool level? I'm thinking of the old Sure Start centres and research now that that cohort's grown up and they're taking their exams or finishing school. The research has shown that the Sure Start centres made a massive difference to outcomes. And if we addressed preschool, then we might not need to be retraining teachers to such an extent. It wouldn't eliminate the issue. There would still be children who had additional needs, but maybe some of them could be helped much earlier on.
Lisa?
Thank you. You're absolutely right, and there is a real crossover often between speech, language and communication need and social, emotional, mental health need. In Plymouth, we have an incredibly high percentage of identified social, emotional, mental health need compared to national. The fact that we also have a relatively good percentage of children and young people who are identified with speech, language and communication need, I would say, is a good thing. It's often a very identified area of need. So if we are identifying that need, that's good. But there is also the possibility that what is happening here is that children are being identified with sorry, I'm so used to using the acronyms, with social, emotional, mental health need, when actually they have a language and communication need that could be addressed, that would mean that then they wouldn't have such a strong need for support in terms of their social, emotional, mental health need. And so as part of the SEND strategy, We are doing a deep dive into that to understand that better in terms of, specifically in terms of that SEMH need. And then the other thing that we're doing, which I think you'll be really pleased to hear, is that as part of the our local area work with schools, so that's as part of our place-based working group, we have identified a priority for early language acquisition, and we're going to focus on early language acquisition next year to work with our family hubs, with our nursery provisions and with our primary schools to really try and boost the language acquisition of our children and young people. And I don't mean where it's at that targeted and more at higher level support where they should be working with a speech language therapist. I mean more at that early intervention level where we can bring all of our children's language levels up, which will really boost them and enable them to strengthen their expressive and receptive language skills, which will mean that they're able to better express their emotions.
That's really good news, and it's just triggered a thought in my mind. I have my surgery in Estover Library, and the session before me is a toddler drop-in, and they read, they look at picture books together, the mums look at them, the librarians who've got teaching background help the mums to help the children to look at them, and that's developing those oracy skills. And I'm just putting the idea out there that the libraries would be another great location to think about.
Thank you, Lindsay. And the good news there is that our family hubs are already working in a really close way with the libraries and have already been doing some early work on language acquisition, which we want to grow. And I think the libraries will be a really good support space for that, absolutely. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Chair. We've talked this afternoon about Longcourse Special School and the potential of taking over the Sir Joshua Reynolds building, which used to actually belong to the council many years ago. And I would be in favour of Longcourse extending into that school, being that this is in my ward. But Councillor Lang will be aware that obviously it's listed and therefore would be subjected to a lot of restrictions as to the alterations, which is why the council sold the building in the first place. So that needs to be a consideration. I'm also wanting to follow up on that, if I may, Chair, with regards to Dunstone Primary School, which has fallen into disrepair, and I'm really saddened to hear that. Because that would have created a considerable amount of spaces and perhaps even provided an opportunity for respite for those parents who need respite care. So could you expand on all of those things, particularly for the new members? Thank you.
If I just make reference to the Dunstan site, because that's something that we've kept that site within our site and such. If suddenly we have, £35 million, there would be, the possibility that we would have a site in which we could actually build, a brand new school. The fact is, as has been explained, is that building using all resources to build one special school is a lot of money. It's you are talking about perhaps as much as £35 million, but we have kept the Dunstan site there in our eye, so that should there be the opportunity that things change and such, that we would in fact be able to have the land. It would be no good finding ourselves suddenly with the money but not having the land. So therefore we have had a sort of wise approach to making sure that we've kept that as an option, and something I have pushed, and we've pushed for quite hard to make sure that that's there and that is an option.
Lisa. And on the first part of your question in relation to the listed building next to Longcourse, we would need to do additional works to make it fit for purpose, but it would not be the first listed building that has become a school and indeed a special school. So we don't see that as a barrier.
can I ask a supplementary, Chair, please, about Dunstone Primary School? Because obviously now that it's empty, it's falling into disrepair, but actually the building structure might still be adapted for special needs young people to attend there. Will we ensure that that school is maintained to a level that rather than do a complete new rebuild, we might be able to adjust the structure of the internal workings of that school to accommodate SEND pupils in the future? Thank you.
Can I take that? When the trust moved out of the school, they did a complete strip of the building. A lot of the equipment, heating, lots and lots of things were stripped out and moved to their new site. So it was a shell pretty much when they left. We have looked at the fabric of the building. Unfortunately, under the building regulations, we wouldn't be able to adapt that building. It was built as a very old primary school, and under building regulations, we just wouldn't be able to adapt the existing fabric. It was something that we looked at in quite a lot of detail. It would most probably need knocking down to rebuild to make it fit for purpose for a special school to meet SEND students' needs.
Thank you, Terry.
Sorry, Chair. I'm going to be irritating.
Can I just move on to? I've got a long list of people.
It's just a quick
Okay.
question on this very subject. Dunstan School, the actual site is an educational site and earmarked for that. So that's why it's important that we just flag that with the new members here so they understand that that is a site for educational purposes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Terry.
And you're right, and it's been held for that, very much so.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Councillor Stevens.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And also, as going back in the covenant, that's why local residents are really pleased that it's not a site that could be recognised for housing, because one, geographically it's unsuitable, but they're all in favour for educational use returning to their one day, which is great. And the site has been foolproof from vandals after incidents, so it's just waiting from the ashes to emerge, just like some political parties might do recently. But can I just say, this document, for me, as a councillor, as a head, I'm trying to control my excitement. It's one of the most riveting and pleasing reads I've seen. So I really welcome, because it's a bold vision. And as you said, it's not unusual for a city to have rising statements, etc. But it is unusual, I think, for an authority to get a grip of this and let's do something different, because if we carry on doing what we're doing, one, it'll be disastrous financially, but also educationally. So doing what we've always done means we'll always get what we've always got. But there are a couple of issues I want to pick up. One, it emphasises the fact that this is a children's services as a whole city priority, city council priority, as was mentioned last time, and also as it mentions in here, about being a welcoming city. A welcoming city, not just for those who visit of different faiths, cultures and nationalities and so on, but welcoming for all our children in the city, so they have the right place to thrive. So I applaud that. But a couple of points I've got. One, the fact that there hasn't been specialist provision up until soon to be for early years SEN, do you envisage that the graph on page 26 of EHCPs for early years children, do you envisage that graph changing? So there might be an increase in children who may have EHCP if there's a greater focus. The other question I have is, following up from what Lindsay said about SEMH, is has there been a deep dive into the context of children with SEMH categories, social, emotional and mental health categories, to see, is this because of familial context that they have this particular category? Is it because of, and you've alluded to, a language acquisition? The pandemic would have pushed back an awful lot of babies and early years children in that department, because they would have been isolated, wouldn't have any good modelling. Is there a mismatch in the curriculum that schools are offering for children who outplay their frustrations through behaviour and so on? And also, it would be dreadful if we had to wait 18 months for a plumber to come if we had a leak. And yet children who are in emotional crisis are often having to wait 18 months for a CAMS appointment. So what sway can we have over that to help? And my second part of the point, sorry, is that on page 43 it says, on page 33 I think it was, working closely with school leaders. Now I know in the past there'll be school leaders who will jump at the chance to embrace this move, and there'll be some who might have a more cautious approach. But if you ask any head to say they would like their school to be the school that they would like their own children to be at, they also have to caveat that with saying they would like their school to be the school where my child who has special needs to be at as well. It's not just the mainstream children, so to speak. So what challenges are there with school leaders in terms of embracing this? And for resource provision, there's a comment there. It says it's linked to this. It says that resource provision have been unpopular in recent times. And could you unpack that bit, please, to see?
Yeah, I don't know if I can remember all of it, but so the nursery provision is going to be an assessment nursery.
Okay.
So yes, it may lead to EHCPs being allocated to children at an earlier stage than they have been before, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. In terms of the deep dive, the SCMH deep dive, that's what we're going to be doing and presenting back to the SEND Strategic Board in October. And in terms of the work with resourced provision and in general, the feedback from schools, I would say overall the feedback from schools has been very positive about this direction of travel. And when we first started working on this, we didn't know what interest there would be in resourced provision. In particular, we now have had our first meeting with any schools that are interested, and it was a significant number of schools attended that meeting and were interested. And that includes secondary schools, which we have laid out very clearly that there has to be a matching secondary school for every primary school. Otherwise, we then hit the cliff edge again. So that is a really important part of the resource provision element. I think they want to know that it's going to be well funded. And they like the idea of it being locality based so that children can go to their local school, and they buy into the idea that the more of these we can have, the less there will be children travelling across the city to go to a school, and the less they will feel as school leaders that they're having to take children from everywhere into their school. So I think in the model that we've designed, we've overcome some of the challenges that we knew we might experience from schools around this. And the last bit was about previous resource provision potentially having seemed unpopular. Perhaps the wording is not quite, we might adjust that wording actually. Hearing it back, it doesn't sound right. What that is that the resource provision we currently have in the city has quite narrow designations to it. So I spoke to a parent last night who was saying that they wanted their child to potentially be able to go to a school that has a resource provision for autism. Her child is on the pathway for autism, near the end of it, but hasn't got the official diagnosis, and therefore was turned down for a place at that school. And actually, if it had been the designation that we're going to give our resource provision, which is for neurodiversity, that child would have had a better chance of having a place at that school. So it's the narrowness of the designation that has sometimes made it difficult to get children into resource provision who could benefit from it and who have then ended up in special school or even independent special school as a consequence. And there was something else that just flicked through my mind that you said, and it's gone again.
The whole city welcoming for children. You mentioned resource provision, school leaders. That's probably it.
Can we maybe come back if we need to? That was really cheeky of you, Councillor Stevens. One question at a time, please, and sorry to everybody else. And I think that you've used up all of your questions for the whole of the scrutiny. So next, Councillor McLean. Okay.
Could I say the discussion we've had about resource provision, and I can see why perhaps a more appropriate name would be useful. But I think what's really important is that the engagement with heads and with school leaders has been so productive because of the leadership that's been provided, in fact, by these people and by the whole team, which I think has really driven a lot of real confidence
and such. And this is about everyone working together to find a way forward. And one of the interesting things that you do raise, which is not just an issue as far as Plymouth is concerned, but the SEMH context and that deep dive. But a lot of work has been doing, a lot of research work has been ongoing, particularly I know at Cambridge University, which is looking at specific year groups of children, specific cohorts of children, and which years they were in, or pre-years that they were in, during the period of COVID, and how that is actually impacting. And you can see as you go through schools, you can see how certain year groups have perhaps been more impacted on than others. But we very much appreciate your enthusiasm for this, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. If we could move on to Councillor Macleay.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to echo Councillor Stevens' enthusiasm for the report. I want to say, like, the breadth and depth of it is amazing, and I think you've given us a lot to go away and chew on. I think the innovation report is really welcome, so congratulations on that. I wanted to touch on something that perhaps isn't in the report, but we know we have a rising needs for ECHPs and SEND within the community. But we also have an issue with waiting times. I'm dealing with a resident at the moment who is waiting 38 weeks for an assessment for their child, and it's quite challenging. I'd be keen to hear from yourselves whether that is an outlying issue or whether we have an issue with waiting times more generally.
Lisa?
That was the point that I had missed. So CAMS waiting times in Plymouth, and I know this won't necessarily be what you would expect, are actually really strong compared to national CAMS waiting times. We're in the top quartile for our CAMS waiting times in Plymouth, I know, compared to national. But in terms of waiting times generally, health waiting times, it is a really key part of the SEND improvement work. It's in the plan. We've also worked really hard with our health colleagues on what waiting well looks like, and we've had feedback from our children and young people about their experience of waiting well and what they feel we need to do to improve that. So that is a central part of one of the priorities within the SEND improvement plan.
Can I just also add to that as well, because it ties in with waiting times, and what's also been the team have worked really hard on is actually communication, and we have, you know, obviously the difficulties of actually waiting. You talk about waiting well and such, but sometimes some of the problems as well that have made things and exacerbated things have been actually the lack of communication. And if you can at least make sure that you are communicating, that does an awful lot to help reassure parents, carers and such. And again, some members of the team have worked really hard to improve that communication with our parents.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell.
Can I have a supplementary, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Perhaps through you, Chair, would it be possible for us to have an update on waiting times for EHCPs, CAMS referrals, and for diagnoses as well? I'm happy for that to come to the next meeting or an email prior to that. It'd just be good for us to get an update.
Could I clarify what the third on your list was? EHCPs, CAMS referrals,
and assessment. I think it's relating to autism, or yeah.
Thank you.
Just on that, Councillor Macleay, so we have the SEND Improvement Board that Councillor Cresswell, Councillor Lang and myself sit on. This sort of can come to that, I imagine, and then I can feed back to you if that's okay. Is that acceptable? Perfect, thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cresswell, for presenting this report. The report doesn't make mention of children receiving free school meals. Now, a child receiving free school meals is entitled to a free bus pass to attend a school outside of their catchment area if they applied but were unsuccessful in obtaining a school within the catchment area. It appears that this isn't always being honoured. It is exacerbated by the limited availability of SEND capacity within the city and our own support officers assisting in the application to schools outside of a catchment area. If the council do not offer this free bus pass, then the parent or guardian must submit a stage 1 or subsequently stage 2 appeal. It is apparent that some parents or guardians do not understand how to undertake these rather complicated appeals. How are we supporting parents and guardians in obtaining the most appropriate school places for their children If we advise parents or guardians to apply for schools outside of this catchment area, will we ensure that they receive this bus pass? And how are these parents properly supported in making these appeals so families in challenging circumstances are not unfairly forced to pay out around £700 a year?
Thank you, Councillor Wood.
Yeah, I'll pick up the transport bit. Yes, we do provide bus passes, and there is an application process with very clear criteria that is set against those for families to meet. It is an online process. The free school meal entitlement will expand very shortly because we're looking at rolling out free school meal for all children who qualify without the need for an application as part of an expansion of the free school meal programme. As far as the transport element goes, the team will support families to tell them how to fill out an application. We do refer to PIAS, our Plymouth Information, Advice and Support for SEND service, who will come alongside families to help them complete any paperwork. And I know a lot of our schools actually support their families as well in helping them. And I hear a lot of feedback from schools saying that actually we filled this out, sat with the parent to enable them to actually fill it out because it is an online system. So we do support as much as we can to make sure that those processes are followed. If they don't qualify for support with their transport, it will because at that stage we don't have the evidence as a service that they are meeting the criteria. We have tested out all of our decision making, and our decision making is very robust about our transport services. If the family still feel that they should qualify, and that might be because they haven't given us all of the evidence, there might be medical evidence that they haven't submitted, they can put in an appeal. And again, the transport team will support them with that, and their schools and the PIAS service will support with those appeals. So we're doing as much as we can to support our children and our families with providing support with transport. I think sometimes there is a little confusion from some of our families that we provide statutory home to school transport for children who qualify under set criteria. A lot of our schools provide their own transport for children who don't necessarily qualify, and I think that is something that we're working with families and our parents' advice services to really make it clear that actually if you are applying through a school, it may not be the statutory support that you're getting for transport, but really trying to make it as clear and transparent as possible, and to make sure that we get to as many children as we can, support them with their transport. But obviously that is within a finite budget for the transport services. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much indeed for that reply. Could we ensure that on the conclusion of this meeting, the guidance is made clear to all of us on the panel? Because at the moment I have an individual we as a council are letting down, it would appear, in this regard. So that'd be really useful to be able to signpost them, because she's emailed me in the last half an hour saying she's giving up, she's trying to get through, and for 3 months she's not received the support from the council she requires. So that'd be really helpful.
Yes, certainly. And if you'd like to send that individual's details directly to me, I will make sure that the team pick that up and we investigate it for you.
That would be really probably useful for that criteria. In fact, not just for people who are actually on the panel, but for all councillors to actually be aware, because it's a question that very often has ended up being directed at myself. So it would be really helpful for councillors to actually know, and a good point to raise.
Thank you very much. I have noted this down, and so has Jake. And it also might be a really good idea for us to have a better understanding about the free school meal and the bus pass, because I've written that down as amazing. Having worked with ACE, that's a really good thing to probably understand for us as all members, not just this panel. All members, that would be amazing.
If I can just clarify the free school meal and bus pass, it's not just the free school meal eligibility. There are other criteria that families do have to meet, but I will make sure that is really, really clear to all councillors, so it's very, very clear when you're speaking with the families in your area.
That's fantastic, thank you. I have Councillor Krusnak, and then we'll move on if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for such a brilliant report, and it's really music to my heart. One of the things that I am not sure is the situation between a academies set up and a state schools set up, and the provision of a placing of the children in those environments. From what I understand, well, from what I was told, the academies have a different approach to state schools. Now, one of the concerns for me is that in allocation of the places at the schools, some individuals with the special needs fall through. And I know of some of the cases where a child is being home taught because he or she wasn't able to get the place in a school where he used to go. So I'm just wondering, what can we do to ensure that the children and individuals get their places where they feel comfortable and they will be thriving? Because from the case that I have been dealing with, the person has gone withdrawn, closed in the doors, affected the family life at the big time, and was completely demoralized in the sense that doesn't have a desire to live in that sense. And I'm just thinking, what can we do to address those individuals that slip through the net? Thank you.
I'll start and just explain a little bit about our admissions process, because I think that will answer the first part of your question. So all school places, for whether it's a place at an academy or one of our maintained schools, come through three sort of like moments in time. There's a point of entry, which is when children are moving for the first time into our primary schools. There is a point of entry from moving from primary to secondary schools. So that's our traditional when children start in September cohorts. All of those children apply in exactly the same way, and it's via an online application, and that is the same regardless of which school within the city that you're going to, as long as they are not an independent school. That would come through our admissions team. The allocations of those places, again, is set out very clear in our admissions processes, and children who are in the area, children who have siblings at the school, and looks at a whole range of things around how we allocate those, and children then get allocated one of their three preferences. Families always put in three preferences so that they get allocated one of those. Children with education, health and care plans, it's slightly different process, and I'm going to hand over to, do you want me to explain the EHC allocation process?
You can keep going. I've got another bit I need to
Okay, that's fine. I saw you with your finger. Children with Education, Health and Care Plan, it's a slightly different process at point of entry because they are guaranteed a place. If they are applying at point of entry for that secondary September transfer into primary and secondary, if they have put a school down as their preference, they get priority over other children who are applying. So we do prioritise those at point of entry. Now, we also have during the year children who move in the year through a whole host of reasons, and we have a lot of movement in our city, and that might not be at your traditional moving point. It could be at any point. For children moving in year who do not have an education, health and care plan, again, that is applied through the admissions team. The team will then do a consultation, but obviously for some of our schools, by that point, they are full. So if a child is perhaps going into year 2 at a particular school, that school may already be full with the students that they've taken at point of entry. So they will then, our admissions team will be working with the school to see if they can go over their numbers in that classroom. Unfortunately, if a school is full, it can be very difficult to get an additional child in. And thinking of the example you gave where a child moved out of the city, that school most probably, that place will have been filled up. Our education, health and care plan children, again, slightly different process. All of our EHC children come through the 0 to 25 service. They will apply for a special school, and again there will be a consultation with that school as to whether that school feels that they can meet the needs of the child with additional support that the education, health and care plan would bring. unfortunately, if you have relinquished a place at a mainstream school because you have left the area, because you are moving or something and then come back, there is the possibility that place will have been filled.
Lisa?
I think what you're describing is something that would be familiar to us. We do have statutory powers to direct schools to take children, and there are occasions where we use those statutory powers. It's not the best way to build strong relationships with our schools. So we do try not to get to that and use it as a last resort, but I have done that in the nearly 5 months that I've been here, where I have done some directions to schools, and actually I've signed off another one only today. The other thing that actually is stronger than that, in terms of rather than waiting for statutory powers, is that we've introduced a vulnerable pupils panel, and that is where schools have ownership with us of what is the best thing to do for particular children with vulnerabilities who need a school place, and those are discussed at that panel. And because it's shared ownership with the schools, it makes it a stronger panel in terms of everybody taking responsibility for all the children across the city and not just worrying about their own cohort of children in their own school. And that's a piece of work that has been in development for the last few months. It's been trialled this summer term, and then it will be embedded in from the autumn term onwards. So we're hoping to see some improvements coming from that with exactly the kind of situations that you're describing.
And I think just to add to that, there's a lot of work that's been going on in terms of those broad things, many of those things that come together, which include things like attendance, inclusion, the place-based working, the vulnerable pupils panel, and also the whole range of work that's been going on, I think, with the team and with heads and bats across the city in order to improve inclusion as far as our children are included within the city. And I think this document is sort of like a manifestation in fact of that. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's something that you have to actually build relationships, and that's really what's been going on and happening within the city. And hopefully this is a basis of actually moving that forward, because the centre of this is each and individual child.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. If that's all the questions, so this is going to Cabinet. We do have the opportunity to bring recommendations forward in this panel. Does anybody have any thoughts for that?
I did, and I wrote down readiness for school, i.e. toileting, speech, getting the basics at that point, and it's been addressed by my colleague here, who's already raised this, getting in there really early. I am aware that some of our schools are taking young people in who are not toilet trained, and therefore that's adding an additional pressure onto staff in school. With them having to change nappies, etc. So I think school readiness, Chair, needs to come back onto our agenda. It's sort of slipped away over the years, but I think we need to be talking about school readiness, and that may cross over slightly with our SEND issues that we have highlighted this afternoon. I'm only saying this because I've been here a long time, some of the new members haven't, and I want them to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Councillor Cresswell.
Could I say, it's probably not actually relevant to this actual paper, but obviously I can't advise what you want to bring to scrutiny, but might be something within that would be relevant to bring to scrutiny. It might be something connected to early years or whatever, in speech and language, but not actually relevant to this particular paper, but a very pressing and important issue that you have actually raised there, in fact, Councillor Beer.
Councillor Beer, we can add this to the work programme, is that okay? Wonderful. I have Councillor Stevens, but I just wanted to clarify something, if that's okay, Lisa. Councillor Gilmore brought up the libraries and reading with young people, and you spoke about hubs. Could you give a little bit more information on that, and maybe we put that through as a recommendation as well, that we have a little bit more feedback from that, if that's okay?
Absolutely, what, to bring that information back into this board? Yes, absolutely, about the family hubs and the way that that's working to scaffold around our schools and our communities.
Perfect, thank you. And I think as well, obviously, as you well know, and everybody who's been on this panel or in any panel that I've been in, I would like the data regarding EHCPs, exclusions, all of those things that I ask for all the time. And it probably will come in again in the next report, but I'd hand over to John Stevens.
Can I just ask, is there a link, is there a tangible link and deliberate link between reducing the cost of homeschool transport using this programme? Because as well as trying to keep children within the city, we're aiming to keep children from crossing the city wherever possible as well. And then that, therefore, there should be hopefully a reduction in homeschool transport costs and an uptake of more independent travel and family travel within their communities.
I'm sure that Amanda will come in with a lot extra as well. But certainly, as you're well aware, we've had discussions in here before about the cost of homeschool transport has been, and absolutely it's gone through the roof. We've done a lot of work. A lot of work's been going on, in fact, on independent travel training and getting as many of our young people, and obviously there'll be some young people who can never do independent travel training, but getting as much of our young people not only doing independent travel training, but also it's a skill for life to be able to travel independently. And I've just got a little nugget here which says the average saving per young person, if we manage to successfully transition them into independent travel, is £6,500. Actual savings achieved in June was 31,000. And we just need to be able to explain to people who might not understand our area of work that not all children will achieve independent travel, as their level of needs are too high to ever be able to travel on their own. But it's also as well hearts and minds of parents and carers, because what you have to bear in mind, if your child has some, has special educational needs, we're all protective as parents, but you're that extra bit protective. And we all know the very first time you send your child off, your child actually goes on a bus, is quite a big thing. So even a bigger issue if your child has special educational needs. Currently, we spend actually 1.17 million transporting children to independent school provision, and we would still need to transport these children to their city provision, but they wouldn't be travelling so far if we actually keep them as much as possible into the city and city boundary. So the cost of transporting them would reduce. It wouldn't go away independently, but obviously there would be a considerable downward pressure as far as those costs are concerned. And that's something that the team have worked really and are working really hard on. And you're right, John, taking this all together, it's also about reducing, it's about what's best for our children, but it's also about reducing especially those costs of travel costs.
And if I can just add just two little extra bits to that, just to actually put it in context, if a child is travelling to an out-of-city placement, they will be on transport anything between an hour and a half. If they're travelling to one of our in-city, on their own twin city one, even on our transport, you'll be looking at about 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on where you live in the city. The average cost for the same child travelling on their own transport to an out-of-city provision is about 27,000 per academic year, compared to 17 if we were transporting the same child to one of our in-city. So yes, there is a correlation.
Thank you for that. I do have Councillor Wood and I have Councillor Gilmore, but are they on recommendations? Because if they're not, yeah, okay.
You said mine. That I was going to say what you just said about early years and preschool.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, through you, I'd like to recommend that the report be updated to make specific reference to the particular needs and entitlements of armed forces personnel and their families, as they don't yet appear within the report.
I don't know that is actually possible to do. I'm not sure that I don't know that that's actually that that, you know, because we're looking at specifically at children with special educational needs, I don't know that you would have a different criteria for children who are who are from armed forces personnel, that they.
Councillor Stevens?
They're expected to follow the same policy for all of the children, but obviously CIAS, which is the Children's Advisory Support Service for the MOD, will advise and support parents when they're transitioning between areas. But the principles apply for my experience, applies to all children, whether they're armed forces or not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through my experience, they're entitled to go to their nearest school, which would of course impact the availability of those schools for other special educational needs children which are that close. So I would have thought, being the Armed Forces City we are, we would need to make recommendations or certainly reference to Armed Forces personnel within the policy, but I'm very content to be corrected if I'm incorrect.
There is certainly for all children, because we have the Armed Forces Covenant, and there are additional funds and such that come into schools as far as children who are from Armed Forces personnel. There are certain through pupil premium and things of that nature. And that certainly applies right throughout our schools, and we're actually very strong as far as the Armed Forces Covenant is concerned, and very strong as far as our children of Armed Forces personnel are concerned. And certainly Councillor Stevens would know quite a lot about that from your experience of where you were a head, and my experience of where I was an assistant head. But I don't think, as far as I'm aware, this is specifically about our special educational needs children, and so therefore it covers all of our special educational needs children, and it isn't something that we would have an additional link in as far as children who are armed forces personnel. I don't think there's any criteria.
Thank you,
on
Councillor
that.
Creswell. So if it's possible, would it be okay for you to check that out and give Councillor Wood an appropriate response to that question? Thank you very much. I don't see that there's any recommendations other than what we've discussed for reports to be brought back to us, if that's okay with everybody.
Sorry, can I take your point as a recommendation to change the word unpopular in there before it goes to Cabinet? Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So we are asked to endorse the proposed options for expansion of special education provision within Plymouth to meet increasing demand, and there is a vote required for this. So can we have a vote, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8, we have seeking education, employment and training. Please can I hand over to Councillor Creswell to introduce the report before going to Tina Brinkworth and Lisa Lynn Scott. Can I just ask, please, before we do this, can we remain concise in what we're saying, and can we keep our questions one at a time, if that's okay, so that we don't get ahead of ourselves and lose time today? There is another scrutiny straight after this one. Thank you. Councillor Creswell.
Right, thank you. And again, this is a real positive. I'm delighted to be able to share that since our last update, the number of young people not in employment, education and training, or those with a situation unknown, is continuing to decrease. We know more of our young people, and we have actively engaged 52% into SEAT status, seeking education, employment and training is the term that we've been using, so that they are actively, as it says there, seeking support with employment, education and training. The team have worked really hard to secure training, to secure funding, for example, the 1.3 million through the SEND Innovation Grant for 2024-2025, funding through the National Development Team for Inclusion to establish a SEND Employment Forum, and we have secured further funding for an exciting project starting in September, which we'll be able to announce shortly when the embargo has been lifted. Very exciting it is too, but I can't say any more at the moment. These programmes provide fantastic opportunities for our young people to build their confidence and develop, comes back here as well, to independent travel and living skills whilst gaining qualifications, along with developing creative employment pathways where young people are successfully transitioning into paid work. The programmes are delivering with impact, with 88.1% of our SEND young people currently in employment, education and training. And I'd just like to point out, we actually had to increase our target because our target was 88%. We surpassed the target. We then set a target, which was an aspirational target of 90%. But given the questioning of myself and such, and pushing further forward, we now have an aspirational target, which is in fact 92% for the next academic year, with agreement from the SEND Strategic Board. So that is a really aspirational target, and some people here will know what aspirational targets actually mean and how important they are, and having those conversations, but, you know, aiming the utmost for the highest. Jake is now going to show you, and let's hope it works, fingers crossed, a short video from Your Future programme, which was designed for young people with an education and healthcare plan. So you can hear directly from the young people themselves. So I pass it over to you, Jake, to play the video.
To sort of understand what I want to do for future careers and employment with a bit of help. That's why I joined.
It was really to gain confidence throughout my working life and to make new friends.
I'm not really sure how to get into employment and all that. What would be good?
Looking for work.
To help with my anxiety and help me find somewhere to work.
I think it has been good. So I've met lots of new friends and my confidence has grown. Also, I've managed to pick up some interview tips.
It made me feel more comfortable around people, and it made me feel more comfortable getting buses on my own, and it made me feel more comfortable communicating with people who I knew.
Probably built a bit more confidence, I'd say.
Moving my level in terms of that I can do more things than I thought I could. Perseverance. Before I went do things like rock climbing, I have during the course.
Well, I did a lot of stuff I thought I wouldn't do. I don't really like water. There's a lot of water stuff, so that was good.
Probably more development with me personally, with the confidence building and the networking.
I can be who I am around people I'm new to.
Not afraid of heights, that's cool.
My mum thought it's given me confidence, particularly with dealing with money and talking to more people.
It's really the high ropes at Scrutiny. That was fun. Just everything at Scrutiny is pretty good.
The activity is good. Surfing, I enjoyed surfing quite a lot actually. Something I thought I didn't think I would enjoy. Turned out to be really enjoyable, very tiring but very enjoyable.
To hopefully work with Chris at House House.
I've got an interview for Babcock. It's for the new cars they got coming out.
I'm currently still working with my mum in my part-time job, but I'm still going to be looking for other long-time work.
I'm just looking to get in a job or employment or internship. I've just started by gonna apply to volunteer for stuff to get a foot in the door.
I'll come back to volunteer around the Future programme.
It's a great opportunity for people to express themselves and try new things.
A really good experience, and yeah, I really enjoyed the time. I would do it again.
I think, yeah. Can I just add that one of those young people actually is now working for us? So it's really is fantastic, and again, there's some fantastic work that's been done by this team, just fabulous, and with some fabulous young people as well, really good.
Tina.
I was just going to add, all of those young people have an educational healthcare plan, and they've all moved on to positive next steps. Every young person who's gone through that programme, we've had 100% success rate for.
That's amazing. I don't have any questions on this, but I do want to say that I get really excited, and I'm really excited for this coming year and how much involvement young people are going to have. The voice of the young person is really going to be heard this year, and I'm really proud to be driving that. This is great. And I think it's testament to the work that you do as a team, and I do know the work that has gone into this, so I wanted to thank you and open up to everyone else for questions. Councillor Tippett.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, that makes a noise. I think it's fantastic looking at reading through the report before the meeting about the 100% positive next steps. In terms of the it just being the one next step, is there more support to take them further than those next steps, and are there long-term plans behind them, or is it more short-term at the moment? I can see from the nodding that it's long-term.
Yes, thank you. So our commitment to these young people is long-term support, and I'll give you an example. So you saw Stacey on the video. The team went in their own time in the evening to go meet from Chris at Harris Hounds, and they actually took the young person along to meet him and doing that mentoring. We are connected to all of the young people, and we're supporting them in work, and that work will continue as long as they need it.
Can I just say how important that is, because it's no good getting the young person to a certain stage and then you're nodding and leaving them then to actually fail. The outcome is really important, and you need really building up their confidence more and more and more so that they actually succeed and have success. And we know that once you build success, success builds more success as you build confidence. That young person who said, once you build that confidence, confidence builds more confidence.
I just want to say that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your answers.
Councillor Stevens.
Can I ask, it is fantastic work. In the report, it says that Year 2 Send Innovation Grant has been really well used. How sustainable is this work when a certain grant stops?
Yes, so all of the work in my team, we are a fully grant funded service, so we always horizon scan for funding. We're quite successful at accessing funding for these projects, but this particular project we are looking to build into our adult education budget as a legacy project. And the funding, which we can't announce today, and I'm really sorry we can't announce it because it's still under embargo, but I know you're going to be as excited as we are when we announce it. There will be annual funding we can apply for through that grant. So there will be legacy from all the work that we're doing.
And the team are absolutely amazing in terms of finding funding and pockets of money and such. They are really superb and use it to best effect on so many of our young people who are doing so well and thriving so much under this.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. There are no more questions. Councillor Gilmore.
It's really brief. I just wanted to make an observation. I mean, it's brilliant that you're getting all this funding, and this just talks to me. I love it. But you're also, as well as spending a bit of money, that's an investment, because these are young people that may end up, without this support, being a cost to society for all kinds of different reasons. So we're not really spending money, we're investing it.
You're absolutely right. This is real investment. It ties very much in with our economic plans, economic development, building our, building Plymouth and such. And you're absolutely right. This is actually really serious investment in our young people, who then give back to the city. So you're completely right.
Thank you very much. Is that okay? There is a little bit of a crossover in this one with corporate parenting, and as a scrutiny panel, we would just like to ask for reassurance from that corporate parenting group that we're not going to take eyes off of this one in that respect, if that's okay. Thank you. Moving on. I was waiting for an answer. No, Councillor Riley, we cannot do that.
I was going to say, Councillor Riley, that goes without saying. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We're going to take a couple of minutes break. How long, Jake? Until 2 o'clock, if that's okay. Take a walk around if you need to, and we'll be back at 2. Thank you. performance report. Please can I hand over to Paul Stevens and Susan London, I believe online. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, can everyone hear us?
Yes.
Yes, super, thank you, I'll start. So I noticed there's a number of new councillors with us, so I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Paul Stevens. I'm one of the performance advisors from the Chief Exec's office, and one of my areas that I look after is the children's social care side of children's services. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sue London, so I do the same as Paul, but I primarily focus on the education, participation and skills side.
And it's fair to say Sue's reasonably new to the post as well. So
Yeah.
what we'll do in this session, as always, is if we can answer questions, we will. If it's more of a service answer, we'll pass over to our colleagues in the room from the service. And if we don't know the answer, we'll take it away and come back as soon as we can. So the report you have in front of you, and I think it's page 70 or 69 on your pack, is the report we've been bringing for the last number of quarters. This is looking at quarter 4, so that will be January through to March. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the quarter 1 ready in time for this, because obviously that only ended just over 2 weeks ago, so there's no time to get that through the review process. The report this time around has a little bit more narrative than it has in previous quarters, because we are at the end of a financial year, so we tend to put a little bit more information into the narrative. The other thing to note is we have also taken on board some of Councillor Beer's comments last meeting to try and put some more numbers of children in where it's appropriate to do so. It's not always easy and not always makes sense to do that in some of the numbers, but we've done it where we hope it makes sense to do it. Okay. I think that's probably the report in a nutshell. What we like to do is obviously you've had this to review and go straight into questions if people are happy to do that.
Are you okay? So I'm just going to speak first, if that's okay.
Apologies.
That's okay. So there's a few things on the performance report that I'd like to flag. So the before we go anywhere, I wanted to talk about unregistered places. This is something that comes to PCIB, and we've covered it at length in that improvement board. So I'll hand over quickly to David to just reiterate that.
So, hello everyone, and particularly to new councillors that I haven't worked with on the Scrutiny board before. I'm David Haley, I'm the Director of Children's Services. Unregistered or unregulated placements are those placements for children that are placed in a placement which is not registered as a children's home by Ofsted. And we, on this scorecard, at the end of quarter 4, had 9 children. Sorry, did you?
No, I just indicated to Zoe that I would speak up.
Okay. We had 9 children that are in those placements. Those children are only placed in those placements if every effort has been made to place them in a registered provision, because they are illegal placements by definition. And as a local authority, we want to avoid any children needing to be in those placements. But there are times and circumstances when, to meet the needs of the children, and the majority of children in the unregistered placements have got significant need and have significant support from up to 4 adults to help and support them. And a number of those children have gone through the court process and have a deprivation of liberty order in place because of the extent of their needs. So we have got some very high need and high challenging children that form the unregulated placements. We have a number of those children, though, that are in placements that have been registered by CQC, and we're working with them and challenging those providers to also become dual registered so that they have the CQC and the Ofsted registered provision. We are constantly looking to move those children from those placements as quickly as we can, although for some of those children, they are receiving really, really good support and are really thriving in the unregistered provision, because the unregistered provision is absolutely meeting their needs. So it doesn't equal that these children are not having their needs met. It means that they're having their needs met in a different way. The number has slightly reduced currently, and I'm sure Temi could tell us how many it is currently, but it has been hovering around 7, 8, 9 over the last year or so. So this is scrutinised weekly within my department through our high needs and high risk panel that Temi chairs as the service director. We send a weekly report to Ofsted. Not every local authority does that, but we choose to, so that Ofsted know what the provision is for those children whilst they're not in their regulated provision. And we have strong oversight through our Plymouth Children's Services Improvement Board. And in our inspection, Ofsted highlighted the fact that our provision and our processes for these children were very robust, and they were satisfied with them, given that clearly none of us would want children in these provisions if we didn't have to. So I'm happy to give way there, Councillor Riley, and hand over to Councillor Lang and come back with any questions if there are any.
I will hand over to Councillor Lang. I would just like to say, as I declared Young Devon earlier, they are now Ofsted registered, which is really good to know.
Yeah, thank you. It's this is one thing I just can't get my head around because it is illegal. We are not allowed to do it, but we do it because we quite often don't have the luxury of knowing that we have a child that we need to find somewhere for the best place for them to be, and then wait for the registration process. It's the way, it highlights the placement sufficiency issue, among other things, and I wanted to reiterate what David said about Ofsted. We are not doing anything that Ofsted doesn't know about, so they are illegal, but Ofsted knows about all of the placements that we have like this. And it isn't a case of putting a child in a placement like this and saying, we've told Ofsted, and that's that. There's ongoing, continuous work all the time to try and either turn that placement into a registered placement, but actually, because a lot of the placement providers are private providers, obviously they need to know that it's going to be worth them putting the time and effort into doing the registration process. So it's a reassurance for this board that it's not that those placements are taken as read, that it's okay for the children to be there. It's something that there is continuous and ongoing work to try and either make the placements legal or to get the child somewhere else. Thank you. That's right for them.
And as the chair of Scrutiny, I would like to assure you that I had these conversations also, and I sit on these boards also, so I do know that what Councillor Lang is saying is correct. Councillor Tibbets.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is on the referrals and re-referrals on page 70. I can see for the last, I don't know, I assume these are municipal year statistics, that referrals received have gone up massively, even going higher than the increased referrals that were expected during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. Is there any particular reason why this has happened that's been identified, and is it anything that we can work on to help keep that down, or is it something that needs to happen because it's the right thing for those children?
Temi?
So in regards to the referrals, there isn't anything as such in terms of keeping those referrals down. The referrals that we are having come into the service are often for matters of need for children and families. What we have been doing as children's social care is working on our early help strategy and our early help response, so that we are allowing families to know what's available within the community. We're allowing our partners to know what's also available within the community, in hopes that that will allow access to those services and then reduce the pattern of referrals coming through into the service.
Can I just add something in there as well, if that's okay? I think when you compare against 22-23, the 2,500 there, the practice wasn't quite where we wanted to be at that point, and practice has been not reset, but there have been improvements on how we're dealing with the contacts coming in, and then the referrals that follow that. I do know that this quarter, the one we're just finishing, has seen a slight reduction on those referrals. So it's leveling with all the work that's been going on over the last 12-18 months since we've had the Ofsted inspection.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a supplementary, Tim?
No, there isn't, Chair. It's really reassuring to hear that the statistics are a good increase in some way, because it means that more people are getting support that they need. So thank you for the clarification.
David?
Could I just add to that, that this is influenced by the whole of the safeguarding system across the city, and this is about all of our partners, our families, making referrals into our system. So almost this time last year, it was September, October time of last year, we ran an extensive partnership programme where nearly 800 people came from across the partnership to really, and we reset the threshold documents. That's a document by which professionals make decisions about the level of need that children have. So we worked with them to reshape and reset the threshold document and make it more applicable to all of our partners, particularly our schools. And that we're now, as Paul has mentioned, we're now starting to see the benefits of that. And we do expect that to continue. We also, from the 1st of July, have reshaped and strengthened our multi-agency safeguarding hub by having an early help hub alongside the multi-agency safeguarding hub, and that hub is triaging and providing both early intervention and support and targeted support for families that we make a decision that they don't meet the threshold for statutory social care. So we're just at that point where we're just, it's too early to start to determine that we're on a trend and things have really, but certainly the last 2 months' data is giving us some positive indication that all of this work is starting to reframe where we're working with children in the system. And of course, wherever we can work with children and families outside of the statutory social work system, that is better for them, and that's where we would want to work with them if at all possible.
Thank you, David. Is that okay? Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm referring to 2.4 on page 79. Now, when we received similar reports such as this to Hampshire County Council's Children and Young People Select Committee, or indeed in South Gloucestershire, we've received further breakdowns, particularly focusing on children from a white working class background, or indeed children from Black African heritage, or children from Black Caribbean heritage. And whilst I appreciate those groupings were not always helpful, as individuals with a background from Barbados, St Martin or Guadeloupe were all rather different, it was how we statistically tried to group children together to ensure that all children were receiving an effort to improve their outcomes as much as we possibly could, and we were very proud on Hampshire to try to do this. The reason for that was that it was very clear, and this was replicated in South Gloucestershire, that at year 9 there was quite a drop-off in educational outcomes among those groups. Before that, year 7, years 8, it was very much on a par with those from, say, an Asian or Indian heritage, but it was very clear differentiations. This is true nationally and indeed in Hampshire and South Gloucestershire. Is there a reason why we haven't focused on these areas within this report? Are they captured somewhere else? And are we ensuring that all children are receiving the best outcomes they possibly can?
There are 4 people poised.
Who would like to take it? Councillor Cresswell.
I think the point that you raised is actually really interesting, which sounds much more like the kind of data you might see broken down if you were within a school as a head teacher, where you actually see the sort of breaking down of all the various groups within your children, looking at girls, looking at boys, and looking at other groups within school. I don't know whether, and this would be a question for the statisticians here, because I, in the past, have been very curious as well about looking at trends, because we see the one set of figures here, but obviously seeing trends over a period of time. Obviously, one of the difficulties is particularly looking at those key stage 4 results, which you'll be aware of, is that because of the effect and the impact of COVID, and because there were obviously several years where full exams weren't actually taken, and there was teacher assessment, it's difficult to sort of like judge and look at the last sort of 5 years effectively. But I don't know, what's the possibility for those people who would really like to see a much a much more detailed breakdown of that actually being done into some of the basis that Councillor Chris is asking.
May I take that?
Lisa?
Thank you. So obviously the data that's presented here is data that you will have seen in previous quarterly reports, because it's the last academic year's outcome data. Our plan for next year is that we will be providing outcomes data broken down into those cohort groups that you're describing, and that we will try and make that consistent across each of the key stages, so that you can see that throughout that data in terms of gender, ethnicity, SEND need, free school meals need, etc.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? No. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 76 of our report and absence monitoring, can I ask the question, please? This seems to be a very excessive amount of people absent from school, young people absent from school. Are they absent through sickness, or are they absent because parents have had no opportunity to go on holiday with their children, so they take them out of school to take them on holiday? And is this a factor in that figure, please?
Lisa?
The majority of the absences still show as sickness. That doesn't mean that there aren't children and families that are still going on holiday during term time, and obviously schools have the option and right to follow the DfE policy in relation to then taking that as an unauthorised absence, which is fined. So yes, there will still be a proportion in there where that is a factor.
And obviously you're aware, because we've discussed this before, the complex issues that there are in terms of attendance, which is not just, although we are worse than some other comparable localities and such, the issue about attendance has been a significant issue, particularly, of course, since the impact of COVID. And I think what's important is that we are doing a lot of work in order to help to improve young people's attendance in school, particularly through the place-based working group, which is seeing this as being a significant focus, because it very much ties into, not just in terms of attendance, it ties into things like inclusion, it ties into something which is much more widely spoken about now, which is about belonging and about young people actually belonging in school. Last year we had we tried to have a sort of an attendance campaign at the beginning of the September term, which wasn't, it didn't perhaps land as well. I think we had some good learning from that. It didn't land as well as it could have done. It didn't sort of, it wasn't perhaps as inclusive and effective and as communicated as well as it could have been. So this year we actually have a sort of, I think we're calling it a strong start to the year, and hopefully as well some of the voices that we will hear talking about belonging and being in school as well will be from young people themselves, who, as you've just seen from that video, are always the most effective voices to have. And I think, if I'm right, we're going to be doing some work with, is it with Newham Council? We've done some work with Newham Council, who have good examples in terms of belonging and attendance.
Thank you, Councillor Creswell. Is that Councillor?
I wanted to say, just following on from what Sally said, that attendance is not just the council's issue. We have a varied academy landscape across Plymouth, so it's really important that we work with our partners to get this right. It's all of us working together that will tackle this attendance issue.
Attendance is everyone's business.
Thank you. Councillor Tibbets.
I got firstly a comment that seeing that the 16, 17-year-olds in education, employment and training is going up is absolutely incredible. So just to highlight your absolutely fantastic work there. Once again, my question is around the child protection plans and child in need. You can see as a whole that numbers are going down, and I just wondered whether that was, in terms of the actual raw numbers, is that because we're getting less referrals in the first place, or is it because we're discharging people from the service because positive work has gone in to make sure that those children are now safe?
Yeah, I think it speaks more so to the latter. So part of the work that's happening is the plans are progressing, and when the plans are progressing, there will be recommendations for us to take children off the plan and work with them within the child in need framework.
Is that okay? Thank you very much. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A quick question on whether we think it's appropriate for the performance report to track the capacity of schools, noting that we've obviously had a population increase, and now there is going to be the taxation on the independent school sector, and there's been some concerns regarding whether that would lead to a group or some children moving from the independent sector into the public provided sector. Are we tracking those numbers to ensure that we don't find that we're going to have an increase and a lack of capacity?
Who would like to take that?
I don't know that we're tracking those children in the independent sector and whether they're likely to come into the state sector. I do know that at the moment we have one of the issues that gets going through schools is that there are falling numbers, and I think that's a national thing, falling numbers in terms of primary schools and primary capacity, and that obviously is going to follow on right through the secondary phase. And which is why one of the things that's being looked at by the new Labour government is the possibility of excess capacity within primary schools, which would enable the possible setting up of state-run nursery school and early years provision.
David?
Shall I just, to reassure you that we do follow the tracking and the projections. So in order to know what school capacity we need across the whole age range, we use our data that we've got, right from the minute children are born and pre-birth, in terms of making some projections on what we think the demographic will be coming into the city. Then we do, and Amanda's team does that piece of work through our attendance officers. So we have got projections looking right through, and we know what the picture looks like, and therefore we can plan capacity. The challenge for us in planning that capacity, as Councillor Lang has said, with the current landscape, if we are going to need to expand capacity, we have to work with the DfE on the routes for that, as the local authority no longer has the resource or the ability to create schools as we did years ago.
I'd like to just bring in Councillor Lang, if that's okay.
I think language around this issue is important. It isn't a taxation, it's a removal of an exemption around VAT on school fees.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wood, do you have a supplementary?
I do. I don't think it should be, well, we won't get into semantics, but it is taxation. Specifically, I think what would be very useful within the report is to ensure that we do have sight of what the existing capacity levels are within our schools. Now, 10 years ago on Hampshire County Council, we had those come through to our select committee, and that was a catalyst to enable us to start the Hampshire School Rebuilding Programme, which was a £400 million programme. And in my own secondary school, that was 6 additional classrooms being built to cope with the capacity. Now, I appreciate that Hampshire was a local authority maintained schools rather than the number of academies that we have in Plymouth, but I think it's quite keen for this committee to ensure that we have a track of those capacity levels so that we can see if there is a problem and that we as local representatives can hope to address it.
David?
So at the committee's request, we can include information of that within the performance report. However, my recommendation would be that we bring a specific report with regards to our projections of school numbers and capacity going forward, because the performance report is endeavouring to bring to life our performance, whereas that's slightly different in terms of checking and testing our capacity and our ability to deal with that capacity going forward. So my recommendation would be for a report to come to the committee on that.
I'm happy with that, David. Thank you. Councillor Cresswell.
I was just going to say that you talk about Hampshire, this was some time ago, 10 years or more ago, where at that time, Plymouth has always been really well aware of, as I think most local authorities would be, about, potential capacity as far as school is concerned. And certainly back at that same period of time, Plymouth had what was called the Schools Organisation Committee, which actually specifically looked at provision as far as schools were concerned, and along with, of course, going back, prior to 14 years ago, where there was quite an extensive school rebuilding and reorganisation within the city, and rebuilding of school provision and new schools, which was under the previous government's schools, building schools for the future plan. So I think many local authorities have those sorts of things actually in place, and schools do. Obviously, local authorities take note of numbers of children being born and the implication that has in terms of those rising fives coming through the school system.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Councillor Wood, are you happy if we have that brought back at another time in a different... Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Stevens?
Can I just ask, on page 72, under the different categories of child protection need, sexual abuse has jumped a lot. Is that because practitioners across partners and so on have a greater awareness of identifying that need? Or is it just, what are the reasons behind it jumping from, say, 3.7 3 years ago to 8.4 in the last quarter?
Temi, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, the jump is a contribution of added knowledge around actually being able to say, when we are making recommendations on our plan, yes, we can use the category of sexual harm. Sometimes what can happen is when we are making plan recommendations, sexual abuse can also fall under the category of neglect or some of the other harm categories, but part of that is just increased understanding around the better use of the category. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else from anyone? Okay, so I have a couple of things, if that's all right. It was going back to the child in need plan and a rise in the child with a protection plan, and also the increase in those with multiple plans. Could you explain that a little further, please? Would that be Temi?
Yes, so could I clarify your question? The increase in...
So there's a significant increase in children subject to a child in need plan and a child protection plan. I just wanted to understand it a bit more, that's all.
So part of that...
And multiple plans, children with a multiple plan.
Yes, so part of the increase is the complexities of our children and young people that we're working with. And that's part of the rationale around why we are seeing that, you know, we have children who have at times repeat child protection plans. Some of the work that is happening across the service is to understand how we avoid those repeat plans for children and young people, how we make sure that we are getting it right at the very first plan that we're working with children and young people on, so that that doesn't become a repeat cycle for families. So that work is underway across with the CP chairs and the social work teams, both in the CSW teams and the front door teams.
Thank you very much. Paul, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know if you could see me on the screen or not. I've got a couple things. If I talk about that one first. So when we were here last quarter, we did say that we were expecting those numbers to increase as we were resetting sort of where children were in our system. So we did say last time that we were going to see that number increase back to a level which was similar to our comparators. And I know it's gone up a little bit more in this quarter as well. So I just wanted to remind you that we had that discussion in the last meeting. And then there were some other things that I just wanted to go back on. Councillor Tippett, you asked about one of the measures earlier about the period it was covering. It's a rolling 12 months. So at the end of quarter four, it just happens to be the financial year. But if we were looking at next month, it would run from July through to June. And I think, Councillor Wood, you asked about some of the statistics. There is a really good source out there which is held by the DFE called Explore, and it gives a lot of our published information where you can go in and, if you like data, like I do sadly, you can go in there and get right into the detail of lots of our education information and our children in care information. There's a good source there of lots of things if that's the sort of thing you like doing. Thank you. That was a few different bits.
Thank you very much. My other point was around absence monitoring from Ofsted. So I bring it to every single report. I'd like to know the correlation in school exclusions, permanent exclusions, part-time timetables, all of those things, because it says that we've got a high percentage of good Ofsted rated schools, and that is fabulous. But I want to know how many of those schools that are rated that highly, how many exclusions are there within those schools? What are the reasons for exclusions within those schools? The demographic, the economic, the geographical, ward by ward, what's going on there? Because we have really good 86.5% is fabulous, isn't it? But we have a lot of young people who are on part-time timetables or permanently excluded, which is unacceptable. And so I'll ask again for the data so that we can unpick that a little bit more clearly. But I would also like to maybe have a recommendation that we ask Ofsted to monitor that absence. Do they do that, David?
Well, Ofsted don't monitor absence per se in every school. I mean, as part of their inspection, they will look at the performance data on absence, and they will talk to schools about what they're doing to reduce absence in most cases, or indeed what the good practice is to ensure that attendance is strong. They will also raise questions about inclusion around exclusions and suspensions and those things that you've raised within their school inspection framework. And they will talk in depth to the school leaders about those issues to reassure themselves that they feel that the actions that the school are taking are appropriate and correct. So some of what Ofsted receive is dependent on the strength of how the school can tell their story, and then Ofsted make a judgment against their framework on the information, the evidence they're receiving. So they would do it individually at that way, and they would also have the overall termly data accessible to them for the city. We regularly meet with Ofsted. We have our annual conversation with them in Bristol on Monday, and I always raise what you're saying is the position between a good Ofsted outcome and the where exclusions and suspensions and those dynamics are high in schools. So we have a challenging conversation with Ofsted about that, because we all, I'm sure, expect the Ofsted framework to be rigorous around those things. So it is a live issue. I would on the 10th of October, we've got a report coming to Scrutiny on suspensions and exclusions. So that information that you asked for there can be provided within that report in terms of some more granular detail that you're asking for, and a greater breakdown in relation to what the pattern of exclusion and suspension looks like across the city.
Yeah, it might be inappropriate, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just think that the conversations that we have around permanent exclusions and timetables and all these young people that are being failed across the whole country, I imagine, when you speak to people off the record, as they say, we all know what the answer is to that. Are schools permanently excluding children that don't fit the required need to meet an outstanding or good? And if we're having those conversations behind closed doors where people are saying, well, we actually probably know that that's a thing, then we need to be bringing that here, and we need to be open, and it needs to be transparent. Thank you.
Councillor, you may wish to invite a head teacher or a multi-academy trust chief executive to come and address the committee with regards to what they're doing in their school in relation to this area. So that may be something the Scrutiny Committee would consider.
If we could put that down as a thing, I mean, I'm very happy for that.
And on a positive, there will be those schools which have outstanding Ofsteds, which are in fact schools which are very inclusive, and there is a good sense of belonging, where there are behaviour and learning policies which are very positive. So there will be a number of schools which have very, very good Ofsteds and actually have very good and very positive attendance as well. And it's mainly about harnessing and working in order to make sure that, and I do this in a positive way, and making sure that we actually share and we use the best practice, and that best practice is actually filtered out and used across our city.
Yeah, I don't just require negative. I'd like to know the data for everything. I'd like to know it all so that we can make more informed decisions and question what's going on. Councillor Lang.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think it's incumbent on us actually on this panel, but also as councillors. These children are our residents, and if we think they're missing out on education that they should be having, then it's up to us to probe why that might be happening. But it can be done in a collegiate partnership fashion, and we just got to keep talking about it until we get to the bottom of the problem. And it is brilliant that we have so many high performing schools, but we have to be clear what the cost of that might be. And on the issue of inviting senior leaders or MAP CEOs, I think it's a really good idea. I did it when I chaired this committee. We only had one MAP CEO who came, but it was a really positive session. So that would be my plea, not that it's for me to invite people to this committee, but it's actually a really positive thing to do, to come here, because actually you can talk about the challenges, but you can also celebrate the really good stuff that you're doing that this panel and the wider city might not know about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Any more questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Just a really brief observation about what you're saying. Before I say this, because it's going to sound like a pushback, but it's not meant in that way. I think the idea of bringing somebody in from that is really, really important. Sometimes excluding a pupil from one school allows them to reset their own behaviour, and they may do better in another school. We should just be alive to that possibility. I think that exclusions, although they're not great, sometimes work for the student as well as for the school. Just wanted to put that thought out there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, which is why I think it's a good to have all the data, to understand the data, not necessarily suggest that these things are wrong, but we need to see what's going on. We don't know what's going on, and that's what our job is here. So, thank you. Any further questions? No? Are we on 10? Moving on to item 10. Achieving Excellence, a strategy for Children's Services 2024 to 2027. Please, can I hand over to Councillor Lang, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member with Children's Social Care Portfolio, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So a bit of context first. We had an ILACS inspection, which is a inspection of local authority children's services, like an Ofsted for our children's social care in January. I'm really proud of how our staff and our teams responded to that inspection, and that was noted by Ofsted how open everybody was, and we got requires improvement, which some people might frame as a negative, but for us actually we were really pleased, especially given a monitoring visit we had at the end of the previous year. The improvement that took place subsequently was really something to be celebrated. And yeah, so this report is a response to that report, and we've already made improvements since then. This plan describes our vision for children's services by 2027, where children and families receive the help they need when they need it, how we prevent problems from escalating wherever we can, where families do need support from our statutory services, if we decide that is going to be the best thing for them, that we step in seamlessly with timely and high quality assessment and intervention, that we're meeting identified needs using evidence-based and value for money approaches, which are delivered within Plymouth wherever possible. You'll see from the plan there's a number of key milestones which I think are very detailed, very robust, and Temi will explain about the plans that sit under all of those. But I think they're a really clear way for this committee to hold me and the teams to account about this improvement work, because be in no doubt, we are on a journey to good. That's where this plan is going to take us, and outstanding is definitely where we're going after that. So I think this is a really good, robust plan, and what I'm hoping is that this strategic plan, Achieving Excellence, is going to be endorsed by this panel, and that the proposed milestones for the delivery of the 10 strategic priorities are also going to be endorsed and implemented in children's services as set out in this plan. I'm really proud of it. It's taken a great deal of work to get to this place. As I say, the improvement is happening every day. We're already in a better place than we were in January when Ofsted came. So I'm going to hand over to Temi now, I think. And actually, although you've spoken already, this is Temi's first appearance at this panel. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Temi now. Thank you.
So in terms of the plan, I think why we're really proud of this is because it was co-produced with our families and children and young people across the service. In terms of the social work teams, there's a real appetite to get things right and achieve this excellence. So this plan, there are plans that sit under it across all of the different teams. So across the teams, everyone can see actually how do I contribute to getting to excellent? What are the little and the big things that we need to do to get things right across our assessments, across our interventions, across our visits, across our early help partners and our engagements. So it's something that we are really excited about and welcome any questions.
Thank you, Temi. I don't have any questions, but I do just want to say just like Councillor Lang, how exciting it is, and the bravery and the creativity that's gone into this. And it's been a large part of my life as well for quite some time now. The work that has gone into it has bled into my home life. So I wanted to say thank you for that. It is a fantastic piece of work, and I'll open it to any questions should anyone have any. No. Hello.
I just wanted to add that I'm really excited to be working in a council where the Children's Services Plan is truly a one Children's Services Plan. So what you can see presented in front of you represents education, participation and skills as much as it represents social care. And each of those priorities have been carefully designed to have all of our work running underneath them and us working really closely together on those. And I hope that you can see and feel that when you read the plan.
Thank you, Lisa. So if there are no questions, sorry, Councillor Wood. I have the wrong glasses on. I wasn't ignoring you, honestly.
That's right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to seek reassurance that we are absolutely certain, as much as we can be in these, I appreciate, that this will drive the Ofsted inspections up. Because as I've looked through the previous Ofsted inspections from 15, from 18, from 24, on all areas, on all of those inspections, we require improvement. But I do note, and I'd just like to clarify and question, on the number of percentage of people who are not in education, employment and training, back in 2015 that was listed as 47%. I'm pretty certain that's been driven down and should be a success story. Can you just confirm that to me, please?
Shall I, Councillor Riley, let Lisa answer the
So
specific
let Lisa answer that question and then
I'll
I have
come back.
Councillor Lang to come in, if that's okay.
Yes, and an important part of that is identifying the young people that where we did not know previously. So even if they for a time go into that category of being neat, it's better that we know that they are neat rather than them being unknown. So there are two important figures there. We should see our neat figures continuing to drive down, and we should see our unknown figures also driving down.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Lang?
Around the reassurance point, so since we had the monitoring visit back in 2022, we have had an improvement board, Children's Services Improvement Board, which meets every 6 weeks, is that right? Which I'm on, which Councillor Riley is on, which the leader of the council is on, and the leader of the opposition also. And that is chaired by our sector-led improvement partner, Dorset. So that is outside eyes on our work, deep dives on everything we're doing, parts of the service they will go in and look at. And again, that scrutiny from an outside authority has actually been really welcomed by our staff, and they've really, I hate this phrase, but I can't think of a better way of putting it, leaned into it. So from my experiences, having had this cabinet post before, we have that sector-led improvement work, which we didn't have before, and those eyes on our work all the time and working with us in partnership to improve. We have a stability in our senior leadership team in Children's Services, which we didn't have. And again, that really helps solidify the improvement work. So, as I say, I think those milestones are really, really helpful because they're really detailed. They all have a plan attached to them, and they're a good way for you as a board to hold us to account. But also, if I can just be anecdotal and talk about feeling, there is a different feeling of pace and grip and all those things, and a whole service determination that actually we can improve. And I think some of that wasn't there before. It was kind of like, oh, it still requires improvement. Oh, well, it's never going to change. It doesn't feel like that now because people can see actual concrete improvement, even from January when Ofsted were here. So that's the reassurance that I would be really happy to give you, and I think Temi and David would say the same.
David?
I would absolutely agree with what has been said in terms of the ambition of the plan and the plan driving forward. The absolute principal aim is about achieving better outcomes for children, young people and families in the city, and that will drive Ofsted improvement outcomes. So, we have to have our right drivers in the right place, and this plan is very much driving at that aim and that vision. I would just, the largest risk to the delivery of the plan is a workforce. So we do have a challenge in attracting children's services workforce for a number of reasons. We know what some of those reasons are, and we are responding to that. We have put in place a new recruitment and retention strategy. We've reviewed everything in relation to how we recruit people to make Plymouth a really attractive place for people to come and live and work. But that is, if there was one most significant risk, that will be it. As Councillor Lang has said, we now do have a stable senior leadership team, a stable head of service team largely, but within the social work service, we now have a quarter of our social workers that are agency workers with us. So that would be our key area of risk that we are responding to, but that is an enduring challenge.
But sorry, can I just add on to that? It's important to say we've got a plan around that. It's not just a Plymouth challenge either. There's kind of a peninsular challenge, and we're all battling for the best people. But actually, I think our narrative, again, is improving in terms of why Temmie's come here from, where have you come from? Gloucestershire?
Yes.
And so that narrative that actually we're an improving authority on an improvement journey that we're all behind, hopefully will help with some of the recruitment issues that David referred to.
Thank you, Jemima. Councillor Cresswell.
If I could just add as well, because we've got a sort of similar journey as far as SEND is concerned and SEND improvement, and you'll probably see that the inspection we had was back in May 2023, when I think I'd been in this position for, I think it was 2 weeks, and we know that we will be having a monitoring visit that will come through probably in about January or February of next year. And again, a very effective SEND improvement board in place, in which we have working with the DFE, where we have sector level improvement. I've also been very fortunate to actually go and visit Telford and Wrekin, which was an example of a local authority with outstanding children's services and outstanding SEND provision as well. So we're sort of like looking outwards in order to make sure that we can be on an effective improvement journey. And I think after the last, particularly because I'm on the SEND Improvement Board, our last SEND Improvement Board meeting was very, very positive, with some really positive work that's coming forward. And I think the other important thing, which I'd completely reiterate what Jemima has said, is that we are very much this one children's service, and we have been fortunate enough to be able to engage and take on key people working in this service who have got the vision in order to make sure that we drive that improvement forward. And we're in probably a very different position now than we were, in fact, 12 months ago. But it's that commitment to continuous improvement, and it's that continuous improvement because at the centre of all this, as I keep coming back to, are individual children.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Are there any further questions? So it's recommended that the Children's Services Strategic Plan Achieving Excellence is endorsed by this panel, and proposed milestones for the delivery of the 10 strategic priorities are also endorsed and implemented in the children's services as set out in the attached 3-year milestones. Do we need a vote on that? Can we have a vote on that, please? Thank you. Moving on to item 11. Child exploitation update. Can I please hand over to Councillor Lang to introduce the item before moving to Ian Taylor, who is online? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents a detailed account of our city's efforts in addressing and combating child exploitation within the context of wider extra-familial harm definition, including the progress made in implementing a contextual safeguarding approach through the Adolescent Safety Framework, which we have worked to simplify to ensure that practitioners across the city are able to recognise behaviours and indicators to help us respond at the earliest opportunity to our children. The development of the new Safeguarding Adolescent Strategy and Guidance and Toolkit is the start to supporting everyone who works with children to be able to identify the signs and to know what to do or where to get help. Children who are at risk of exploitation are some of the most vulnerable children in our city, but also some of the hardest for us to do the work that we need to do to reach them. So we need time to build those relationships that will be the foundations to them trusting us to help them to be safe. And I'm really proud that the recent Ofsted inspection noted how we're doing everything we can to help and support children. And I'm just going to read an extract from Ofsted, if that's okay. So Ofsted said, the response to children who go missing and children at risk of extrafamilial harm is coordinated effectively across the whole service and is helping to reduce harm. Persistent interventions from the specialist team for children who go missing, youth workers and the Edge of Care team are providing a strong and consistent response for children. Most children who go missing benefit from timely return home interviews which capture their experiences well. Information about wider harm relating to exploitation, gangs and substance misuse is well considered and updated through strong Safer Me assessments. If children are missing for more than 24 hours, multi-agency child protection strategy meetings take place to ensure a joint response to help to find children and to reduce risks for them. So that's from the Ofsted report from 2024. But there is always more to do, and this report highlights the ongoing work of the Strategic Safeguarding Adolescents Group to understand the ever-changing risks that arise and to respond together to address them and to keep our children safe. So now I'm going to hand over to Ian Taylor. Thank you, Chair.
Ian, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you said, my name is Ian Taylor. I'm a service manager responsible for the child exploitation response within the council. The report sets out what our current response has been and where we're moving the service to. We've been on quite the journey since I took over 19 months ago. And recently we've developed the team even further to have a Be Safe service. And the Be Safe service doesn't just look at children who are being exploited, but we recognise that the overlap between children who are being exploited and particularly sexually exploited, children who are committing sexual harm as well, and peer-on-peer influences. So the report sets out those contexts and also what we're doing around the adolescent safety framework within the city. We've recently reviewed the framework with our partners and took on board a lot of the feedback that it was quite complicated and very long. So we simplified the process and we've made it into a 5-page report looking at best practice from Durham, Telford and Dorset. We've been able to do that and simplify the adolescent safety framework. In addition, and as Councillor Lang was saying there around our Ofsted report, we've set up a daily intelligence briefing, which has been really well received, both locally, regionally, and now nationally as well. We get lots of other local authorities coming to look at how we're doing our daily intelligence briefing. And what we're looking at in those briefings is what's happening to children in the city overnight. So if a child's been arrested or a child's gone missing, a child reports homeless, we come up with a response, which is an instant plan, a medium-term plan, a long-term plan of how we can address what we're finding in those children. And I'm very pleased to say, performance-wise, that's helped us drive our performance to be a lot better as well. We're not seeing the same number of children going missing as we were a year ago, when we had lots of repeat missing episodes by the same children. And the way we've done that is to set up a team called the Be Safe team, who'll work with those children individually the ones who go missing. So that's what the report sets out, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. I would just like to ask a question. So I think it would be remiss of me not to ask this question, because I don't work in Plymouth specifically, but I work across the whole of Devon with very trauma focused young people who are very vulnerable to this. So I wonder how we do it here. Sitting on lots of triage and things, and I kind of sometimes am a little bit shocked by the concept that some will slip through the net. I never want to hear that from anyone, ever, but it does. I do hear it quite often from other authorities. And I just wondered, in another scrutiny this week that covered health and adult social care, there was a police officer from Devon and Cornwall Police who said that he covers right care, right person, and his main objective was to get young people to stop them from travelling through into adult social care. And I just wanted to know, how much joined up work do we do? It kind of comes through everything we speak about every single time. This organisation could help with this organisation. How much work do we do with other organisations, charities within Plymouth? Because I'm betting there are, we could stop those from slipping through the net if we had those wider conversations.
Yeah, the short answer is a lot. So at our daily intelligence briefing, it's attended by not just statutory agencies, which are such as the police, youth justice, our MASH, but we've also got education providers who attend those meetings as well. The NSPCC are involved, Bernardo's are involved with us, and we do a lot of work. So in terms of children slipping through the gaps, we take referrals from anybody, so anybody can refer into us if they've got concerns around exploitation of children going missing, and every child is discussed that we receive a report for. What was happening previously and what we didn't do very well was we would quite often take those referrals in, and then what was the plan? I said earlier on, we've got a short-term plan, a long-term plan. No child disappears from our daily intelligence briefing anymore unless we've come up with a plan for that child. So we follow that child all the way through, and then also children are very transient and move across borders really easy. So what you're talking about there, Councillor Riley, is looking at other areas as well. We've set up a Devon and Cornwall child exploitation group now. We meet monthly where we discuss themes that are happening, and we're seeing the same themes. The theme at the moment is more girls are going missing, but we're seeing that right across Devon and Cornwall, and looking at how we can work together to address that. But also the county line gangs are very transient as well and coming in and out of the city. So we work well with the third sector, and we've increased our cooperation with the other three local authorities on the peninsula as well.
That's fantastic, thank you. It's really good to hear that, and it's quite reassuring. I guess if I could probe a little bit further. So, for example, those who attend ACE, who are complex in behavioural needs, and so cannot be contained within the school setting, or are on part-time timetables, or they go off and do a thing somewhere else. There are people somewhere who don't know where that child is. So they're not at school, they're not at home, they're not with us. I kind of am worried about those children. I know it's really difficult, and it's kind of, casting out a net in the dark. I get that. But there are young people in that situation who are slipping through the net.
So it's really interesting that you raise ACE, because ACE is the only school who sits on our daily intelligence briefing, and simply because of the number of children who go missing who also attend ACE. What we've done is we've been able to expand our team over the last 19 months. So the team is, when I took over the team was 3. We've now got 9 members in the team. So and I'm sure you can really understand from your experience that this is really difficult relationship-based work where a lot of trust needs to be built. But what we've done is we've allocated 4 youth workers who go out with our children who regularly go missing, and we try to build up that trust with them as well, so we can work with them on a one-to-one basis. It's difficult work because the pull from the county line gangs and what they can offer compared to what we can offer makes that difficult, but we do try to build that relationship and stop those children slipping through. I accept there will be times when children do. We don't get to every child as often as we want to, but the response that we've got now is such an improvement over the last 19 months that we are being held up as an exemplar for other local authorities to come and visit and look at this approach of how we've set this team up.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Lang.
Ian has said most of what I wanted to say, but I think if you wanted to try to design something that stops, as far as possible, people slipping through the net, then the daily intelligence briefings, is it whatever. I've been to that briefing, and it's extraordinary that it's happening every day, that people who have a lot to do are giving, time at the beginning of their day. And I was kind of blown away, I suppose, by the how well everybody on that call knew the young people that they were talking about, and the determination, as Ian said, until there's a plan, those children don't disappear off that discussion and from that forum. And I'm not surprised that it's gaining, recognition nationally, etc., because it's time. It takes a lot of time and effort from everybody, but it shows the determination to try and prevent what you're talking about people falling through the cracks. I think it's really impressive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lang. I wonder if there's a recommendation to potentially brief all members. I know we had a briefing a while ago, but we have some new members since then, and I didn't know about this particular new thing, so it might be a really good idea if we could have a briefing. Jake, if you could note that. Thank you very much, Ian. I have David wanted to come in.
Again, just in terms of reassurance, I think we have to be really mindful of our language in terms of this phrase around children slipping through the net. And I want to just reassure you that our processes are very, very robust. I have through daily, I see the children that are missing daily, and those reports don't stop during the day until all of those children have been found. We also have a range of other places, including TEMI chairs, a weekly high-risk panel for children alongside the daily briefing, etc. So the processes and the governance, as Ian has outlined, for these children is very, very strong. So can we stop children going missing? No. Can we stop that child from that school that may abscond? No. But what we do have, well, we may be able to, lots of times we do, but sometimes we can't and we don't. But what we do have is the partnership systems in place that child, for example, would be identified quickly, they would be alerted. Everybody, including me, gets that alert, and I see what's happening as it happens to try and find that child. And I know when that child's being found, and I know what action's being taken to help and support them. So again, I'm just reassuring the panel that yes, there are times when children are not where we want them to be, but the system here is very, very strong in both identifying, notifying and responding to that.
Thank you, David. Sorry, language is important. I do apologise. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you know, back a long time ago, it was myself and Councillor Sally Hayden that brought child sexual exploitation to this council, just at the time that Rotherham was erupting, and it was very aptly timed. So I'm very passionate about this particular subject and the victims that's created from it. I think it's important that we actually, for the new members, talk about county lines, and so that they understand what that means, and how young people are exploited through that process. I do have other other questions that I'd like to ask, please, regarding actions being taken with regards to the recovery of young people who have gone through the process of exploitation, whether it be sexual or otherwise, because there are several avenues of exploitation of young people, what their recovery pattern is, or what plan is in place to help and assist recovery for these young people.
Shall we just take that one question first, Terry?
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Who would like to? Ian, would you like to answer that?
Yep, I can do. We work closely with the NSPCC and Bernardo's, and we have got a referral pathway that we can refer children who have suffered a lot of trauma into those different agencies. Recently, we brought the Be Safe team into the Youth Justice Service, which I also manage. And the reason that I pushed for that was because we've got CAMS workers and a psychologist within the team that I can refer directly straight away into those services without having to wait for the normal referral pathways through CAMS, which can be quite long at times. And we tried to work with those children. And what we've also tried to do is recognise, and it is recognised as good practice across the country, but look at this relationship build work. It doesn't need to be, for example, a youth justice worker doing a piece of work with a child to build a relationship. So we're really working closely with our partners of these traumatized children to find the best person to work with that child and to move that child forward, and then to look at their aspirations as well. So we've been working closely with education, participation and skills, and looking how we can refer these children on to pro-social activities that engage them as well, and try to rebuild we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we're starting really at the bottom to look at what needs these children have and trying to build those blocks up so we can build return them back to the lives that they want and to live the aspirations that they want. It sounds quite simple to say it like that, doesn't it? But this is really difficult work, really intensive work. And I'm very lucky to have the team that I've got who are doing this, because we are seeing progress. And I think that's evidence in the number of children where we're not seeing the repeat missing episodes. Last year we were at 1.9 repeat episodes. I think we're at 1.4 now. So we've seen a big drop in those children who are repeatedly going missing. And the other thing we've seen is we keep the centre open. I work in Frederick Street Centre, which is where I'm sat in the dark at the moment. It looks, doesn't it? But it's we keep the centre open on a Thursday evening, and children know they can come in and just drop in and ask for help as well. And we're about to go through a refurbishment, but afterwards we're going to keep the centre open most nights where we can try and do that as well. So traumatised children have a point of contact to come to.
Terry, I will come back to you. Just 1 second. Do I have many other people for questions on this? Have you got them written down? Because I'm going to close the list off because we're behind time already. So as long as no one else has any questions, I will let you continue, Terry.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm really aware of the rates of young people who are being exploited in Plymouth. We haven't got a Rotherham here in Plymouth. I just want to say that. I think it's really important to reiterate that. But I wanted to know really how child sexual exploitation is affecting our teenage pregnancy rates and whether that's being recorded in that data.
I don't think we have that data around child sexual exploitation and the record in terms of our teenage pregnancy rates. We can go and look at and consider what the data tells us around it. What we do know is the child sexual exploitation for our children and young people in Plymouth can be both young men and young women, so we can go and look at that. But I can't speak to there being a correlation around our pregnancy rates. I've not seen that trend from the report that Ian and the team produced.
Thank you very much.
I wonder if, so a teenage pregnancy is something that I've flagged up for a select committee, which obviously has to go to Scrutiny Management Board. But potentially we could maybe have a little bit more of a look into that for that purpose. Would that be acceptable?
Yes, Chair, it's been looked at before on several occasions, but I think we mustn't take our finger off the pulse on this. And I must put on record that, I'm not going to be here forever. So please, please do not let child sexual exploitation ever come off our agendas in children's, because it's crucially important that we keep our finger well and truly on the pulse of this, because it expands in different areas, and it's really, really important to me and a lot of people in Plymouth who've gone through sexual exploitation. So please don't ever lose that context. I did have another question. Sorry, Chair. We talked about county lines, and to make sure that our new members understand county lines and how that works in context of exploitation, I think it's worth just running through very briefly what county lines means. I understand it, but there are people in this room who don't understand it, and I think that would be really helpful, Chair, for them to know.
So I think, in the interest of time here today, Jake has noted a briefing for all members on child exploitation, and county lines will come into that. Is that acceptable?
That's
Councillor?
very acceptable. Thank you
you
very much indeed.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. And thank you, Ian, for very enlightening and inspiring sharing this afternoon of the work you and your team do. Can I ask a couple of questions from the data provided? There was quite a spike in the number of children missing and episodes in May. If you can explain any reasons behind that. And also...
Can we take one question at a time, please, Councillor?
So quite often when we see spikes, it's related to either an event in the city or warm weather. I'm probably the only person in the city who looks outside when it's sunny and hot and dreads it, because the children go missing a lot more when the weather's hot. We did look at that spike in May, and we did talk to a number of children. There was a party in an Airbnb on the Hoe that we lost a lot of children to, who went missing. So these spikes, when we get them, MTV, when we used to have that, was a big spike. The fireworks is a big spike that we see missing children go through, and so is the 10 on the Christmas lights. We quite often see children go missing around those events. The one in May was to do with the weather. It was nice weather, and a lot of children just didn't go home. And we want parents and we want organisations to report the children missing, and they're doing. We've done a lot of work with care providers in the city of what an appropriate when a child is actually missing, or when a child is having an unauthorised absence, and that's helped us drive down our figures as well. But those ones in May was very much it was warm, and we lost. We didn't lose, but we had a lot of children reported missing in that period of time.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Stevens.
Okay, thanks very much. And also with the 72-hour return return home interview, is there a reason why up to 3 days is allowed? Is that down to individual circumstances?
No, that's the government target.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. No. Who am I looking at? Councillor Lang, sorry.
I wanted to just respond to Councillor Beer's point about not letting this go off the agenda. I think I've spent time with Ian's team and heard them talk about individual children that they're working with. The level of how they try to build those relationships, find something that young person is interested in and responds to, and the Councillor Stevens' word "inspiring" is true. It really, I think you can be reassured that the people who work in this area and across children's services are absolutely passionate about anything that is to the detriment of children who live in our city. And I do think, I don't know if at some point the committee would want to go and visit, well, probably Frederick Street's being refurbished, probably not a very good idea at the moment, but honestly, that team and the work they do and how much they care and the effort that they put in to build these relationships so that they can stop this kind of thing happening to these young people is really impressive. And I think you should be reassured that, well, hopefully you'll be here for a long time to come, Councillor Beer, but if you're not, that work will continue. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. That's very reassuring. Any further questions? No? Okay, moving on. So you've logged the recommendation for a briefing for councillors, thank you. Moving on to item 12, tracking decisions. Members are asked to note the progress of actions from the previous meeting. So I have, where are we, Jake? The action 1, council would write to Matt to see how they were working towards Plymouth plan in driving towards a consistency across all schools and other areas in regards to SEMH. So I remember bringing this one myself. I've had a conversation with Lisa, who I will bring in, and I'm confident that her decision is the right one for now. So I'll pass over to Lisa.
Thank you. So we are completing a deep dive on social, emotional, mental health, which will be reported into the SEND Strategic Engagement Board, and the findings then used to create clear actions working with our schools in relation to identification and potential misidentification of SEMH needs.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I look forward to hearing about it, for sure. Does anyone else have any comments on the action log? Okay. Thank you very much. So then we move on to the work programme. Does that mean these guys can go now? No? Okay. So would anyone like to add anything to the work programme?
It's not an addition, it's a clarification. How often is the performance scorecards going to be coming back to the scrutiny?
It will be at every meeting.
Every meeting, great.
Yes. Any further? Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just to confirm from David Healy, that report you were going to produce to this committee, would that be included under item 13 or item 12, just to make a reference that it's going to be coming?
So that is under the work programme, so that would be an additional report to add to the work programme, and then for scrutiny to decide into which meeting that you would like that report to come.
I have done quite well, haven't I? Councillor Stevens. One at a time and through the chair, please.
Can I ask, the SEND sufficiency, could we have an update at each scrutiny meeting, just on the progress of the plan being implemented?
So, Councillor Stevens, if I can answer that. So, myself, as chair, I sit on the SEND board, and so more than happy to bring back a kind of a roundup, as opposed to asking officers to bring a report to two different boards, if that's acceptable to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any questions for the part 2 paper on item 3, was it? On item 7? No questions? Oh, look at you guys. Okay, so with regards, sorry, going back to the work programme, I have asked for an update on the early help strategy, which I have on the 16th of August. I've asked for also us to have a look at that as a committee, which will probably be October, which David has kindly agreed to. I've also asked for the possibility for us to visit the MASH so that we can understand that a little bit better as a visit. It needs to be done in no more than groups no more than 3. So if you would like to email me if you're interested in doing that, I will get that organised for you. Is that okay? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
It's great to be back. Enjoy your evening. Thank you.
You too.
We have another 8 minutes to ask questions. I'm winding you up.
I have planning committee in half hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wood does have questions.
Sorry, excuse me. Part 2, yeah, part 2
You have to
paper.
pass the resolution to go in part 2.
So, sorry, my mistake. Do members have any questions in relation to the part 2 paper before I look to pass a resolution? Councillor Wood.
Terribly sorry. Well, I misunderstood that it was part 2 paper. I thought it was going to be agenda item 15, so I missed the comment. Having just looked through the individual costs associated against individual places,
We're not in part 2 yet, so just if you've got questions, then we'll pass the resolution and then.
Oh, I see. Yes, please.
To consider passing a resolution under section 100 sub 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 to exclude the press and the public from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 4 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act as amended by the Freedom of Information Act 2000. Vote required, please. Agreed, thank you. I can just switch off tech.